case number IT0484-BST, the prosecutor versus Ramush Haradinaj, Idriz Balaj, and Lahi Brahimaj.
Thank you so much. Could we have appearances for the day, please, starting with the prosecution?
Yes, good morning, Your Honours. Paul Rogers for the prosecution, together with Mr. Aditya Menon, Ms. Daniela Kravets, and our case manager today, Ms. Lena Pedersen.
Thank you so much. Could we have for Mr. Haradinaj, please?
Your Honour, Ben Emerson on behalf of Ramush Haradinaj, together with Rod Dixon, Andrew Strong, Annie O'Reilly, and Kerry Rowan.
Thank you so much. And for Mr. Balaj.
Good morning, Your Honors. Gregor Guy Smith, together with Colleen Rohan, Holly Buchanan, Kenti Zaberi, and Ramon Baquero.
Thank you very much. And for Mr. Brahimaj.
Good morning, Your Honours. Richard Harvey, together with Paul Troop, Luke Bonish, and Sylvie Kinabo. Your Honours, may I just raise one issue before we start? And I think you may have been informed. I had grown a little concerned yesterday. The trial chamber has said that it does not wish to impose time limits on any of the counsel in their submissions, which is very kind. But the trial chamber also wishes to conclude today, which we fully understand. As the last counsel to be in a position to present a submission to Your Honours, I don't have a guarantee from anybody, nor would I expect one, of exactly how long they plan to be, nor do I offer one myself. But there is the potential that we might need, if Your Honours are minded to consider this, to sit a little longer than the hours that we would normally sit today and go into what is known as an extended sitting, in order to make sure that on behalf of Mr. Brahimaj, I am not foreclosed from making the submissions that I think it appropriate to make on his behalf. I will not be protracted. I will try to be concise, but I do want to be thorough.
We hear you, sir. As you do understand that this impacts not just you and the chamber, but also our interpreters and other members of staff. If they are prepared to accommodate, we'll do so. Otherwise, we might have to go into tomorrow.
Thank you very much, Your Honour.
Thank you. Mr. Emerson.
Your Honours, when we broke yesterday afternoon, I had been making some submissions to you by reference to the testimony of Rustam Tetay from the first trial and a protected witness from this trial concerning Skender Kuçi and Mr. Haradinaj's intervention when the detention of Skender Kuçi was brought to his attention, as the evidence establishes, by Rustam Tetay himself, that the first thing that he did was to make that difficult journey over to Jablanica and then get there and remonstrate when he arrived with Nazmi Brahimaj over the treatment of Mr. Kuçi and order his immediate release. And Your Honours may remember the words from the protected witness that this type of thing damages our cause. And Your Honours may think that that is a telling detail, because, of course, as I said to Your Honours yesterday, Mr. Haradinaj was commander of those who chose to follow him. And his popularity and the support that he, and indeed the cause that he represented, enjoyed within the community depended upon his reputation. And to that extent, it may well be thought that the ill treatment of those who have been detained, allegations of torture and the like of people in custody, would have precisely the opposite effect, that which Mr. Haradinaj was so painstakingly seeking to build, namely a consensus among the community to take part in a volunteer force. So that was the first time he appears actively on the evidence in this case. There are two others. The second is in connection with Witness 3. Witness 3, Your Honours will recall, was one of those who, he said, escaped from Jablanica on the 17th, 18th July. And he testified in some considerable detail about being redetained, including in the end by Lahi Brahimi, and locked into the boot of a car, and eventually delivered by Mr. Brahimi to Glodjane, where he was initially badly treated by a particular soldier there, and then two young boys who he believed to be the brothers, or one of them to be the brother of Mr. Haradinaj, entered the room, caused the ill treatment to cease immediately, and began altogether to treat him in a different manner. At that point, a man he believed to be Ramush Haradinaj, the commander of Gllogjan, certainly, entered the room where he had been. And he told Your Honours that he was questioned by Mr. Haradinaj as to how he came to be there. He was then given, offered food, given cigarettes, offered a bed for the night voluntarily. In other words, he was told he could stay the night if he wished to do so, but that he should sleep away from the window because there was a risk that otherwise he might be hit by a Serbian shell or sniper. In other words, as soon as Mr. Haradinaj arrived on the scene, he told you, his treatment was entirely appropriate, his presence was voluntary, and he was given support. And I'm just going to read a short passage of his testimony. He's asked this question: so was it obvious to you as well that he, that is Mr. Haradinaj, didn't know who'd brought you there or what it was you were accused of? This is transcript 1678, line 11 onwards. Answer: I believe he was not aware, because it was a matter of time. When Mr. Lahi Brahimi took me from the shop, there was no time to discuss with other people. I'm not sure, but I believe that he, that is Mr. Haradinaj, was not aware. Question: and did you tell him that you were accused by Mr. Brahimi of some form of treason? Did you tell the man you believed to be Mr. Haradinaj that that is what the accusation was, or what did you say? Answer: he asked me my name, where I was from, who brought you here, and for what. I told him my name, surname, the name of my village. He asked, why are you here? And I answered that there was a question of an automatic rifle. I was accused. Pausing there, Your Honours will recall that there was an allegation that Witness 3 had stolen a rifle that ought to have been surrendered to the KLA. The answer continues: he asked me whether I knew someone where I could sleep in Gllogjan. And I said I didn't. Pause there, question, pause there, because we'll come to the issue of where you were going to sleep in a moment or two. You've just told us that he asked you your name and where you were from and who brought you there and for what. And you say you told him your name, your surname, the name of your village, and he asked, why are you here? And I answered there was a question of an automatic rifle. Now, pausing there, did you tell him that you had been brought there by Lahi Brahimi? Answer: yes. Question: how did he respond when you told him that? Answer: he made this noise, shh, and it's recorded on the transcript as SHH. It seemed incomprehensible to him, I think. Question: what was the noise? Can you describe it for the record? And then Your Honour, Judge Mlotu intervenes to say it's described on the record as shh. And the witness says, like this, and then it's recorded PWOW. Whoa. He was, I think, says the witness, angry. angry why these things happened, why these bad things happened. Question, angry towards whom, do you think? Answer, of course, that Lahi had taken me there. So again, that witness in the evidence that he gave most certainly does not support the suggestion that any ill treatment of him was pursuant to a joint criminal enterprise. Just as in the case of Skendakuchi, when ill treatment was brought to Mr. Haradinaj's attention, the response was to remonstrate, to criticise, to say this should never happen again, nothing of the kind should ever happen again because it is damaging our cause. So too, when witness 3 informs Mr. Haradinaj that he has been ill-treated, detained by Lahi Brahimi in the way described, the reaction is that Mr. Haradinaj was angry why these bad things happened, angry towards Mr. Brahimi. So that doesn't, in our submission, support a joint criminal enterprise. Indeed, it proves that no such joint criminal enterprise was in existence. This is not, I reiterate, a command responsibility case. But even if it were, in the circumstances as they existed on the ground, it wouldn't begin, in our submission, to come close to the threshold necessary. But this is a joint criminal enterprise case. And what you have in each instance where there is an intervention by Mr. Haradinaj is an expression by those who saw it of what was clearly an attitude of opposition to the ill treatment of individuals who had been detained at Jablanica. Can we just move on to look at a short passage of video from witness 3? Where he deals with how he reacted to the treatment afforded to him by Mr. Haradinaj now.
It's based on the evidence that you've already given. I'm just going to put some short propositions to you and invite you to agree with them without necessarily a lengthy elaboration. First of all, you understood that you were being given a bed for the night where you could...
Could we have the tab number, please?
Nothing showing on my screen. Do your honours have it, the video showing?
Just went away now.
Could somebody please sort it out?
The interpreters would like to get the tab number of this transcript.
Amazon, the interpreters would like to get the tab number of this transcript.
I'm sorry, I can't hear you.
Yeah, put on your earphones. The interpreters would like to get the tab number of this transcript.
It's tab 8, Your Honour.
Tab 8, interpreters.
Stay voluntarily, if you chose to do so. Correct?
Correct. That's true.
You'd been reassured that you would be kept safe and taken home in the morning to your relatives. Correct?
According to those two young men who prevented the blonde guy from beating me, I started to feel a little bit reassured.
And you've been given food and cigarettes and a relatively safe place to sleep the night.
Yes, that's right.
Now, there came a point later in the evening when you were called to go downstairs to see the commander. Is that right?
Yes, that's right.
So having expected that you would be sleeping the whole night there, I think you said before it was sometime around 11 o'clock you got a call to come downstairs. Is that right?
Yes, that's correct.
You told Mr. Rogers yesterday, perhaps understandably in the context of the testimony you've given, that you were scared when you were called downstairs, but when you got there, the man that you believed to be Mr. Haradinaj said to you, forget about what has happened, go home to your family and forget about everything, you are free. Is that right?
That's right. This is what he told me. Of course, had I known before why he had called me downstairs, I wouldn't be afraid. But before going there, I was afraid. But when I went downstairs, he told me, you can go to your family, don't have anything to do with this, you are free.
And I think he advised you to stay away from the KLA generally, is that right?
He said, stay away from what happened, return to your family.
Can I ask you this, witness, did you understand what was being said to you to mean this? That you would be safely now returned to your family and that nothing bad would happen to you again? Is that what you understood this man you thought Mr. Haradinaj to be saying to you?
Yes, when he said these words, and when I saw the people who had come to fetch me, I knew that no harm would ever come to me from this person. And in fact, I've never been afraid of Mr. Haradinaj. I didn't know him, he didn't know me, and I am not afraid even now.
But if that was what he was promising you, that no harm would come to you again, that is exactly what happened, isn't it? Witness 3, no harm did come to you again after that.
That's correct. No harm came to me, no threats. I didn't have any contacts with them.
I mean, would it be fair to say that once you had come to the attention of Mr. Haradinaj, from that point onwards you were safe?
Yes. Yes, this is what it happened, in fact. I never had any problems.
I want, if I may, to put on... Thank you. Now, just pausing there, I don't propose to say much by way of comment other than this, that it is perfectly clear from the testimony of Witness 3 that Mr. Haradinaj's intervention in his case was not only inconsistent with the existence, or rather with the involvement of Mr. Haradinaj in a joint criminal enterprise to ill-treat Witness 3, but was proof positive of quite the reverse. Can I turn now to the third, and in our submission, the last relevant evidence of an involvement of Mr. Haradinaj in this case, and that is the incident concerning the ECMM monitors that Mr. Rogers thought it right to place such reliance upon. Now, I summarised to you, Honours, yesterday what had happened in relation to that and when it had happened, and pointed out that for the prosecution to seek to rely on that interchange as evidence of Mr. Haradinaj's propensity for violence against those who were detained was, in the circumstances, preposterous. Mr. Papas, together with his interpreter Castriot, and two other ECMM monitors, one called Wolfgang Kaufmann, and another individual present with him, had driven in a white Land Rover directly towards the confrontation that Your Honours saw yesterday depicted in the BBC news footage of the Serbian forces overrunning Glodjane and Iznic, causing wide-scale destruction and the mass displacement of the civilian population. There was initially a situation where they were stopped by armed men as they approached Iznic, taken to a KLA headquarters. There was a confrontation in which the interpreter initially was struck, and the interpreter then told Mr. Papas that these armed men, who are unidentified, suspected that they were spies for the Serbs. They had, as the evidence disclosed, satellite telephones and maps with them. After about 25 minutes, he said, Mr. Haradinaj arrived. He asked them some questions. But as Mr. Papas told the last trial chamber, it was totally different, the way he was behaving, the way he was asking information. Once Mr. Haradinaj arrived, everything was quite civilized. Yet again, once Mr. Haradinaj arrived, everything was quite civilized. That's P318, transcript T4132. Once Mr. Papas explained that this was an ECMM group, Mr. Haradinaj was quite open and understood their mission. Not only that, but having been called away from the front line to deal with this somewhat reckless escapade by the ECMM group, Mr. Haradinaj took them back to their car, checked that it wasn't concealing weapons, told them that they were free to leave, and arranged for them to be escorted safely out of the area. And Mr. Papas, when asked, said that throughout this encounter, Mr. Haradinaj was, quote, absolutely calm and controlled, and that his manner was, quote, gentle and polite, unquote. Now, just pause for a moment on this, if I may, because what Your Honours have in the evidence is a 92-ter witness statement of Mr. Papas. But in the original trial, he had signed, first of all, a much more detailed consolidated witness statement, which contained a passage explaining just how appropriately Mr. Haradinaj had behaved during his intervention. That passage did not, however, find its way into the 92-ter statement, and accordingly, he was cross-examined on the passage that had not found its way into the 92-ter statement that Your Honours have. And it may be, I don't know, that in proposing that this was relevant evidence in this case of Mr. Haradinaj's propensity for violence, that the prosecution overlooked this. Certainly, had they focused on it, it would have been very difficult for them to make the submission that they have made. Could we look, please, now at a short passage of video in which he was cross-examined, Mr. Papas, about that section and what he had to say about it. This is P397. The contents of your consolidated witness statement where you deal with this matter. So I'm just going to read the passages.
What's your tab number? I'm sure that the interpreters will want that.
Tab 9.
Thank you.
To you and ask you please to confirm that these are an accurate reflection of your evidence, because they don't find their way into the written statement that has been admitted in evidence in this case. Quotation, and I'm reading from the second half of paragraph 24 of the consolidated witness statement and then on. Quotation, he was absolutely calm and controlled, and in a gentle way he started interrogating us one by one. He was polite. He started with Penty, who was obviously shocked
frightened from the development of things, Pejë, and this is in brackets, Pejë had been visiting our team for just that day, and this had happened to him, close brackets, full stop. He checked his papers and only had a short discussion with him. I recall that he asked Pejë a question about a lake in Finland that was the subject of some dispute with the Russians, and Pejë answered him. After Pejë, he asked the interpreter in Albanian a few things. However, I'm not aware about the content of their conversation. After Castriot, he turned to me and asked me about my whereabouts and occupation back home. He told me that he has no problem with Greeks, although the politics of my country build up hostile feelings in a lot of his comrades. He told me that he had visited Greece several times and that he has a lot of Albanian friends living there, and some of them came to Kosovo to fight with him. I explained to him the circumstances in which we had ended up there, meaning our presence in Risnich. I explained to him our mandate and the purpose of our presence in Kosovo. It seemed to me that he understood and was satisfied with my explanations. Afterwards, he spoke in French and English with Kaufman. And then a little further on, paragraph 26, I want to put the following passage on the record. Afterwards, the commander came with us to our car, and he started to search it thoroughly, inside and outside. He asked us if we had guns, and we said no. After this, he told us that we are free to go. He offered us an escort out of the area, which we agreed to. He then ordered the three men in the black uniform, including Idriz Balaj, who had stopped us before, to escort us out of Gllogjan. And then finally, two lines at the bottom of paragraph 26, the whole incident lasted for about 1.5 hours under continuous shelling of Serbian artillery. So first of all, can I ask you please to confirm that that is an accurate reflection of your evidence?
Yes, it is.
And secondly, just one or two supplementary questions. I mean, it follows from that description that your impression of Mr. Haradinaj was that he remained calm throughout this interchange and behaved reasonably to you. Is that right?
That's right.
And this was despite the fact that the village of Gllogjan and the village of Risnich were under heavy fire and the Serbs were closing in.
They were under shelling, yes. I don't know. It's an estimation that the Serbs were very close, yes.
And you know from the video you saw yesterday that by the following day they'd overrun Gllogjan.
Yeah.
Now, for a commander to come away from the front line, to divert himself and others from combat, to deal with a group of monitors who had decided to drive straight into the heart of a frontline zone, would you accept as obviously a rather unwelcome distraction from the job of defending people's lives in the course of the conflict?
In the way that you put it, yes.
But nonetheless, once he had established your good faith, he not only returned your documents and ensured that you could leave, but gave you safe passage out of the area, diverting soldiers again.
Mr. Emerson, I have to ask you to slow down for the interpreters. Could you perhaps please repeat your last question?
I said, nonetheless, once he had established your good faith, he not only returned your documents and ensured that you could leave, but gave you safe passage out of the area, again diverting soldiers from the front line to meet the needs of providing you with protection.
Exactly.
Now, how can it be that a responsible prosecutor would put that incident forward as evidence of Mr. Haradinaj's supposed involvement in a joint criminal enterprise to ill-treat prisoners in Jablanica? Those three incidents, Mr. Haradinaj's intervention in Skenderkuchi's case, his intervention in the case of Witness 3, and his intervention in the case of the ECMM monitors, are the only evidence in this trial of his active involvement in anything, apart from the confrontation with FARC soldiers, which I'm going to come back to towards the end of my submissions. But leaving the FARC distraction to one side where it belongs, those three incidents are the only evidence of Mr. Haradinaj doing anything relevant in this case. And what do they tell us? A joint criminal enterprise? I don't think so. What then of the sloppy allegation that simply because he was a popular KLA commander, he must be guilty? Because that's really what it comes to. It's necessary to put that in its proper context. Mr. Rogers tried to dismiss the consistent evidence that was before this trial chamber and the last, that there was no vertical command structure even after the 23rd of June. Mr. Emerson might call it horizontal, but in the end he was an influential commander. Well, we're not dealing with abstractions and generalities and, of that nature in a criminal trial. We deal in specifics. And there are no specifics upon which Mr. Rogers is in a position to rely. But let's just look at what the evidence was. Can I just show you, Honours, first of all, the evidence of Skender Regimetai, who Mr. Rogers relies upon and sought to put before you to suggest that this relationship was such that Mr. Haradinaj can somehow be held responsible for what happened. Now, you told us yesterday in Jablanica. This is tab 10 in the bundle. That until the 23rd of June meeting, you personally had never received an order from Ramush Haradinaj. You were sub-zone commanders of equal rank, even though he was your coordinator, you told us yesterday, and you never received an order from him before the 23rd of June. Do you remember telling us that yesterday?
Yes, I remember that, and that stands. I told you that everything that was done on the basis of...
Just focusing on the question as narrowly as you can for a moment. I'm going to suggest to you that that remained the position after the 23rd of June, that you never received an order from Ramush Haradinaj to do or not to do anything militarily within your subzone after the 23rd of June.
Yes, the subzones and the responsibilities of the subzone commanders continued. We continued to work on functionalizing the positions and the responsibilities even after the 23rd of June.
And in practical terms, After the 23rd of June, the relationship between the sub-zone commanders, in practical terms, remained horizontal.
Yes, it remained horizontal in reality, which means that no one could give orders to the other. Everything was done by consensus. It remained the same.
So prior to the 23rd of June, it is common ground and unequivocally established that Jablanica existed wholly outside the 4 subzones that had been established on the 26th of May. And after the 23rd of June, the relationship between the commanders both within and outside that subzone, that's to say those that formed the Dukagjin plain operational zone, remained horizontal in reality, quotes, which means that no one could give orders to the other. You see, when Mr. Rogers makes the concession, as he does, that this was a force with no conventional command structure, he fails to take that through to its logical conclusion. The logical conclusion is that this was not an army with a vertical hierarchy at all. Precisely because it depended on the consensus of volunteers, people who were culturally, you've heard, centred around loyalty to their own villages and their elected village heads, it was necessary for everything to be debated by consensus, typically in the Oda, where men would gather and debate what should be done. But there's no suggestion that there was any debate at any stage which resulted in a decision to detain, beat or kill people in Jablanica, or indeed to establish a detention facility there. So Mr. Rogers says, well, we've got a witness from the first trial called Zima Hassani who says that Ramush Haradinaj appointed a commander in Vranoc. Remember, I showed you on as Vranoc. It was near Baran and one of the villages attacked in the May offensive. I said, you may want to note Vranoc. So Mr. Rogers says there's a witness. He mentioned it in their closing brief, Zima Hassani, who says that it was Mr. Haradinaj who appointed the commander of Vranoc, a man called Din Krasniqi, which of course would be inconsistent with the proposition that the villages elected their own commander.
Could Mr. Emerson give us the paragraph reference so we can just check?
Well, from your own brief?
Yes, please.
Well, I'm certainly will do. I certainly will do. Just give me a moment. I'll dig it out. Can we just see what Mr. Hassani actually said? Because I think, again, we're looking at a situation where this prosecution case has been drafted by looking at 92 witness statements, not at reading transcripts of evidence.
Was there a commander of the people who considered themselves to be KLA in April 1998 in your village?
We didn't have any commander at that time, but as a person who was in a position to contact people, to be a kind of representative, I would say, this is how it was.
In paragraph 4, you refer to Ramush Haradinaj coming to Vranoc on many occasions, including to announce the appointment of Din Krasniqi as the commander of the Luji Ibaran region. Did you know Ramush Haradinaj personally?
I do know Ramush Haradinaj personally. After the offensive against Vranoc, Ramush Haradinaj didn't appoint Din Krasniqi. It was the people who elected him.
So, in answer to Mr. Rogers' question, at paragraph 30 of his brief, the very passage that Mr. Ray, in that excerpt, was putting to the witness is cited as authority for the proposition that the witness went on to contradict. Can I move on now to look at the way that these structures, these independent power bases, linked together? And in particular, can I just call up, I'm sorry, is it P78, which is, just to remind Your Honours, the map.
Did you say paragraph 30 of the brief?
Yes.
30.
30, yes. And Your Honours will see footnote 102.
Microphone for Mr. Emerson, please.
102.
I see the footnote, but I'm not even sure how it relates to paragraph 30.
Well, the suggestion is, in the last words of paragraph 30, that Mr. Haradinaj was influencing the selection of the leaders, and it's footnoted to a statement of Mr. Hasanaj, which said he came to announce the appointment of Din Krasniqi as the commander. Because in fact the evidence is that the village, as one has heard consistently, elected their own
Thank you so
commander.
much. I'm grateful for your explanation.
Can we just call up P78 briefly, please? You want to have it behind tab 12, but it's well, perhaps you don't have it behind tab 12, in fact. I don't have it behind. Yeah, you know, we do have it, in fact, in black and white. But it's helpful, I think, if we can. Can we call it up in colour? Just to make the very obvious points. So these are the 4 subzones. The subzone around Gllogjan, commanded by Mr. Haradinaj. Subzone 2.
What is its number again?
1.
1.
Your Honours can see the large area. Pardon?
Very faint to read, so that's why I'm asking.
Is it on the screen? It's faint, is it? Because it's quite clear on mine. Sorry. Your Honours, I'm told that if you switch over to the live feed, it will come up more clearly.
The live feed? Well, that's where I was.
Very well.
That's where I was. What was this one? That's better. Yeah, you got it. Thank you.
So subzone 1, this is the 26th of May meeting. Subzone 1 around Gllogjan. This is Rustam Tetai's map. Subzone 2, Irznic, under the command of Rustam Tetai. Subzone 3, the area around Pozar and Dashinovac, under the command of Skender Regimetai, who you've just seen testifying about horizontal structures throughout. And subzone 4, under the command of Shemsuddin Çekai, who also gave evidence in trial 1 about the horizontal relationships that existed. And it doesn't take me to make the point that Jablanica falls well outside of that subzone structure. So we know that from the beginning of the indictment period right up to the 23rd of June, Jablanica was even formally entirely outside any attempts at coordination of these zones along the front line. But what we also know from the evidence you've just heard is that even after the 23rd of June, there was no command relationship of the sort that Mr. Rogers has tried to conjure up. So what did the witnesses say about this? First of all, Mr. Tetai himself explaining his map. Can we please, this is tab 13, just call up a short passage of Mr. Tetai's evidence, P521.
more detail at the minutes of the meeting that took place in Jablanica on the 23rd of June. But first of all, we can see from the zones that you've marked on this map that as at the end of May, they did not include any area to the west of the main road. Is that correct?
Mr. Emerson, you may wonder why we are what I hear from the video here is not what I see on the transcript at tab 13. So
can we just try again? Because I think it may be that it cut in at the wrong moment, because it certainly seems to be what I've got on my transcript. Does your honest transcript, is it headed 3720, begin?
That's correct.
I'm going to.
Yeah, I'm going to, yeah.
Well, I think that, unless I'm mistaken, I think that is the passage that's...
Well, that's not what I heard from the video. Okay, let's play the video again.
I'm going to come back in a little while to look in more detail at the minutes of the meeting that took place in Jablanica on the 23rd of June. But first of all, we can see from the zones that you've marked on this map that as at the end of May, they did not include any area to the west of the main road. Is that correct?
Yes.
And they obviously did not include Jablanica either.
Until the moment when the original staff of Dukagjin was set up, Jablanica was a separate zone, so it was not included in these four subzones. It was not included in them.
Well, that was what I wanted to ask you. You say until the translation reads the original staff of Dukagjin was set up. Can I just be clear? Are you saying until the meeting on the 23rd of June, when the staff of the Dukagjini plain was established, until then Jablanica was not part of this coordinated grouping? Is that right?
That's correct. That's correct.
And can we just run now through a series of testimonies back to back, and I'll explain what they are with each of them just before they start. So the next tab 13, I'm sorry, tab 14.
Mr. Emerson, can I ask a little question? The area Hassanai in tab 11 is talking about. Could you remind me of which subzone that is in?
Yes, Vranoc, if you want to see, is Baran, outside. It's not in amongst the subzones. It's okay. Outside as well. If you look at Baran, which is just to the upper right-hand corner of subzone 4, I'm sorry, Baran is outside, but Vranoc, if you look beneath, immediately south of Vranoc, it's just in the edge of subzone 3 under the command of Shemseddin Çekai.
Thank you.
So as I say, I'm just going to run through these passages and just introduce them as we go. So tab 14 is the evidence of Skender Regimetai on the way in which relationships are operated between these different villages. Can we just look at that briefly? Would you agree with me that one of the reasons why a commander from subzone, from a particular subzone, could not impose his will on another subzone was because everybody was volunteering and everything had to be agreed by consent?
Yes, correct.
But there was also another reason which you told us about right at the beginning of your testimony yesterday in some detail, which is that these areas, these concentrations, these towns and villages where commanders had been appointed, were fiercely, culturally jealous of their independence from one another. Would you agree with that?
I would kindly ask you to repeat the question.
Another reason why everything had to be done by consensus was because culturally in Western Kosovo, as you told us yesterday, these towns, which were concentrations of KLA activity, were fiercely jealous of their independence. They protected their independence from one another. They wouldn't want another leader from another town telling them what to do, because that would break the consensus, wouldn't it?
It's correct, because these people who were appointed through the will of the local people, going through the rounds I mentioned. So the arrival of everyone else to command, to take over the command, didn't make sense to them. So I think they wouldn't agree. I believe they wouldn't have liked that, because they trusted us, and I believe that we did a good job, given the objective circumstances.
Now, just to conclude, in your evidence as a whole, we've really talked about 6 subzones. The 4 that were marked on the map I showed you by Rustem Tetay. The one that you've told us about, which on the western side of the road around Voksh, subzone 5. And the zone surrounding Jablanica, which I think is sometimes referred to as Dushaka. Is that correct? Dushkaya, I'm sorry.
Yes, that's right.
And even after the 23rd of June, right up, let us say, until the end of September, it was not possible, was it, for the commander of any one of those zones to march into another one and tell the people there what to do and what not to do, as an order.
Unless it was asked for, otherwise it was not possible.
And that remains the position despite this aspirational blueprint that we see on the screen in front of us, didn't it?
Yes.
The aspirational blueprint were the minutes of the meeting of the 23rd of June on which Mr. Rogers relies. Next, please, Bislim Zairapi, trying to explain to the trial chamber the cultural issues underlying this independence. This is tab 15, and there are 2 short passages I want to play, please, tabs 15 and 16. I'm sorry for that diversion, Mr. Zairapi. We were going through the relationships between the military power bases that were associated with the main families in Western Kosovo. And you've told us it would be absurd to suggest that either the Brahimis or the Haradinajs could tell the Jasharis what to do or what not to do inside their compound, and you've told us it would be absurd to suggest that the Brahimais could tell the Haradinajs what to do or what not to do inside their compound. And the last question, which is the obvious concomitant of the first three, it would be absurd, would it not, to suggest that the Haradinajs were in a position to tell the Brahimais at that point in time what to do or what not to do?
Your Honor, it's the same problem. There's no basis for that question being put to this particular witness. It's not clear to me how he can comment on that particular family tie that Mr. Emerson is referring to, the Haradinaj-Brahimai family tie.
I'm sure the witness can tell us if he's not able to comment on that tie. Overruled.
It would be absurd, wouldn't it, Mr. Zarapi, to suggest that in March 1998 the Haradinaj family could impose their will or discipline on what was or was not done by the Brahimais inside Jablanica. Now, pausing there, that no on the transcript is capable of being ambiguous because of Mr. Menon's interruption in the testimony. Because the actual question was, it would be absurd, wouldn't it, to suggest that Mr. Haradinaj could tell Mr. Brahimai what to do? And the answer on the transcript actually says no. And the inference, obviously, was that what the witness meant to say was, yes, it would be absurd, no, he couldn't do it. But we clarified that immediately afterwards. Rappi, I want to suggest to you that in March 1998, none of those three families had authority to impose their will on one another. That is correct, is it not?
I wasn't there at that period to be able to know, but experience would show that yes, that is correct.
Thank you. Now, pausing there, we're going to move on now to a witness that Mr. Rogers cited to you yesterday in support of certain aspects of the evidence about command, Suf Krasniqi, who gave evidence in the first trial. There are two passages I want to play, Your Honours. They're both very brief. Essentially, his testimony was to the effect that these commands remain separate, not solely after the 23rd of June, but right through to the end of July. In other words, to the time just before the August offensive. Can we play, first of all, tab 17, which is P514? When you were answering questions about this relationship between these different power centres in the period after the 11th of July yesterday, you said they were not linked. You said in Gllogjan there was Ramush, in Prapachan it was Tahir. Each operated independently, which means that we did not have the means and the possibilities to communicate with each other. Then you said, however, if there was a problem, or if we wanted to send some information, we send a courier in order to ask for some help. And then you said this, when I was in Bahrain, if I had some problems, then I send some soldier with a vehicle in order to ask for some help. I sent him to Ramush, to Lahi, or to Tahir, the one which was closer. And I wanted to understand that answer a little more. Are you telling the trial chamber that from where you were in Vranoc, any one of those three commanders would be regarded from your point of view as operating autonomously so that you could call them or contact them directly?
Yes. That was not important at the time. If a village came under attack, all the villages voluntarily offered to help. So, for example, when the attack began on Jablanica, I asked for assistance from other villages because Ramush could not come from Gllogjan to the place where I was. So whichever village was able to send volunteers to help, they would do so.
What you appear to be describing is a fairly horizontal rather than vertical command structure. Would you accept that description?
Yes, that's true. That's what happened. It's something that really happened. Whichever villages were closer to where the attack occurred, those villages went to assist.
And now tab 18, please. Again, so that we're clear, during this month of July, there had been a major Serb offensive, a major battle at Gllogjan in the end of the first week of July. Is that correct?
Not in the last week of July, earlier.
That may have been a translation issue. The end of the first week of July was what I was putting to you.
Yes. End of the first week. I think you are right, about 5th or 6th.
And there was another major Serb offensive through the area within a week or so of the swearing-in ceremony, wasn't there?
Yes, there was.
Just important to get our chronology clear. Now, looking at this map, you've told us that it's depicting, in a graphic way, locations after the 10th or 12th of July. And we can see that you've described Jablanica as a staff HQ. And you've described Glodjane as a staff HQ. And I just wanted to understand from your perspective as an officer on the ground in Bahrain, is that how you saw them, as being on an equal footing and independent of one another? Those two staff HQs.
Yes, at that moment this was how it was. They were independent. The same was true of us. We had no means and each of us operated independently.
So that date's important because he's saying after the battle that ended on the 12th of July, they remained independent. So that's a full 3 weeks following the 23rd of June minutes. But it's a position he's describing going forwards after the 12th of July. Of course, that was the very period where on the evidence Pal Krasniqi, Skenderkuchi, Witness 3 and Witness 6 were detained at Jablanica, and a few days before the escape attempt, of which you have heard evidence. And so we're left in this situation that in the absence of anything specific to rely on, the prosecution falls back on reputational evidence, that slippery, dangerous area of inference based on nothing but tittle-tattle. And you get a curiosity here, because in Mr. Balaj's case, they rely on evidence suggesting, some of it from the Serbian intelligence, that Mr. Balaj had a fearsomely bad reputation. That alone. So therefore he must be guilty. Whereas in Mr. Haradinaj's case, quite the opposite thing is said. He had an incredibly good reputation and was hugely popular, and therefore he must be guilty. That's the danger of this type of slippery, unevidenced reasoning. But let's look at whether it's fair, what Mr. Rogers put to you. Let's look at whether trying to derive from the testimony of people in Western Kosovo who thought that Ramush Haradinaj was a war hero who protected them, a man who didn't engage in dirty abuse, an honourable fighter, how it is that the prosecution seeks to turn that into evidence from which they invite you to infer a joint criminal enterprise. Can we start at tab 19?
Did Ramush visit your brigade on a couple of occasions there, accompanied by Salih Desali and Idriz Balaj?
Ramush came, but Balaj was not with him. I did not see him. He was not there. Salih came on his own, and Ramush came on his own.
What was the purpose of the oath-taking ceremony in July 1998?
The aim of the visit was because we had made a request to him. We had a great number of soldiers that wanted to join the KLA, and we wanted them to pledge their allegiance, and we wanted him to be present in this ceremony so that he could see from close what these young men were doing and how they were so eager to join the KLA.
Who's the he? You're referring to Ramush Haradinaj there?
Yes, of course, Ramush. We invited him, and we wanted him to be part of that solemn ceremony in the oath-taking ceremony of the new members of the brigade.
Why was it so important to you that Ramush participated in this?
It was important because people loved him. People wanted to see him and to get to know him from close by, because for them Ramush was an idol, and he still is.
Did they see him as a strong, powerful commander?
I appreciate Mr. Ray may not be getting the answers that he wants, but to seek to put words into the witness's mouth through the form of leading questions in my submission is not an appropriate course. Let him ask the witness questions in a non-leading form and have the answers that he gets.
Mr. Ray, could you reformulate the question or put another question to the witness?
You said a moment ago that for people Ramush was an idol. Why did they see him as an idol?
I don't know. That's what people thought. They trusted Ramush, and they thought that he was a person who sacrificed his own family to protect the whole population, and that's why he was considered an idol. So he was not ready to sacrifice only himself, but his whole family.
What was the feedback you were getting from these people about Ramush's command style?
Ramush had no time to command everywhere, but people trusted him. They thought that if Ramush went there, there would be no problem for them, for the people. This is something that occurred among the people. That's how the people loved him.
Now, Mr. Rogers read to you an extract from the evidence of Skender Regimetai on this question of Mr. Haradinaj's authority. But he read only one passage, and I'm going to show you two, because they're put in proper context. First, the one that Mr. Rogers read to you in his closing speech. This is tab 20.
Sir, I'll repeat the question for you. Can you tell us, sir, whether KLA soldiers in the Dukagjin zone respected Ramush Haradinaj's authority? And I'm referring to the time period from prior to the 23rd of May 1998 and after the 23rd of May 1998.
Forward, I'm afraid. Tab 20 it should be, first of all, which is from the transcript of Mr. Regimetai's evidence in this trial at 1097. Video on that section, so I'll just read the transcript. This is Mr. Menon asking about a passage in Mr. Regimetai's witness statement. The fourth sentence of the Albanian version of my statement should correspond to the English version, which reads, prior to the 23rd of June, he already had de facto authority over the Dukagjini zone. Mr. Rogers' point. And I don't think, says Mr. Menon, that there's any dispute that the he you're referring to is Ramush Haradinaj. Can you tell me, sir, what you meant by the word authority? Answer. I meant that based on the resistance that he'd put up with his family, the incident had a lot of echo in the whole country. And Ramush, as a result of that, was widely respected for this resistance that he put up in protecting his family and his village. And with the passage of time, in fact, he became famous. Everyone, most of the people knew him and had a lot of respect for him because, as I said, he put up that resistance and protected his family and his village. This is my way of thinking when I said that. Sorry, sir, continue, says Mr. Menon. So, on the basis of what I just said, people respected him, and if you are respected, you enjoy authority. I don't mean here legal authority, but the authority of a person who was successful in protecting his family and his village and his people. This is my line of thinking. So authority there is being misused by the prosecution in their closing submission. This is not any form of authority over other people. This is authority in the sense that people respected Mr. Haradinaj for what he had done. But let's look at how Mr. Regimetai then goes on to explain it a little later. This is 1099, it's tab 21.
Sir, I'll repeat the question for you. Can you tell us, sir, whether KLA soldiers in the Dukagjin zone respected Ramush Haradinaj's authority? And I'm referring to the time period from prior to the 23rd of May 1998 and after the 23rd of May 1998. Or excuse me, after the 23rd of June 1998, it should read.
The population always respected him. The population was suffering. Ordinary people were suffering, and he defended them, so that's why they respected him.
And my question actually was specific to KLA soldiers, sir.
The whole population
Thank you.
wanted defense, and they got it.
Okay, thank you very much, sir. And can you elaborate, sir, for us on why Mr. Haradinaj was appointed as the commander of the Dukagjin zone officially on the 23rd of June 1998? Why was he selected?
Because we proposed him. Perhaps we were not sure that we, the others, could carry that duty upon our shoulders. That's why we proposed him. He had shown what he could do, and we proposed him. Ramush could have refused, but he took on the responsibility by respecting us and our proposal. He, out of his goodwill, he accepted the task, but he could have refused.
And sir, when you say he had shown what he could do, can you clarify what you mean by that, sir?
I mentioned it earlier. He had shown that he was a good soldier, a good leader, and a person who could gather people around him. And that's why we decided that Ramush be a coordinator for the subzones earlier. The same logic worked later. There were 5 professional officers there, and each of us could have taken that burden upon their shoulders, but we proposed him, and he did not hesitate. He respected our will and our proposal for him to be the leader.
And sir, when you say that Ramush Haradinaj was a person who could gather people around him, what do you mean by that, sir?
I mean that he knew how to respect other people. He was a good communicator. He was reasonable. So this was a person who could gather people around himself. It was this that I meant. He was able to discuss the problems that people had with them. He listened to their concerns, and that's why he had that reputation.
There's one final passage I wanted to deal with very briefly.
Would that not be a convenient moment?
Simply that I'm reaching the end of this topic, and I'm happy to break and do one last section after the break, or do it now.
Okay, go ahead.
Simply as regards that last passage, obviously you want us to see that the testimony is that Mr. Haradinaj gathered people around him because he was reasonable, knew how to respect them, and listened to their concerns.
Yeah, we have seen that. Just do the last thing that you said you wanted to do before
yes,
we take the break.
Tab 22, please. This is Zima Hassani from the first trial.
In paragraph 5, you refer to an expression, God in heaven, Ramush on earth, meaning that he had great authority. Then you say, no one was superior to him. I just want you to tell the trial chamber, the judges, what you mean by no one was superior to Ramush.
I said this because from every time there was a Serb attack until the KLA became engaged in the war, when the name became known, Ramush, that of Ramush Haradinaj, it was myself who put that expression, God in heaven, Ramush on earth.
What do you mean by no one was superior to him?
I thought that how can you put up a resistance to the enemy? I didn't know that it was difficult to put up resistance. In fact, it was very small resistance that was put up.
I'm not sure I quite understand your answer. I'm asking you about why you say that no one was superior to him. What do you mean by superior to Ramush?
After he became known, I don't know how it has been translated there, but I personally gave this description. It was my personal opinion.
Well, and what do you mean by it? That's what I'm asking you. What do you mean by no one was superior to him?
He was good then, and he is good now. I mean, he is loved by people. He is considered, he's held in esteem by the Albanian people.
Thank you. That would be a convenient moment.
We'll take a break and come back at 1:45.
All rise, puis vous levez.